Today is a very special day because in just about 8 hours, I'm hopefully buying a car that's going to help me finish a project that's been sitting untouched for 15 years. But right now, we've got a whole bunch of driving to do. So let's get loaded up and I'll tell you more about it on the way. So the project in question is a 1969 FiberFab Jamaican kit car. It was given to me as a gift when I was 13 years old, and at the time, my dad and I did start working on it, but unfortunately, we didn't get very far before he passed away. A couple years later, I went off to college, and like I said, it's pretty much sat untouched for 15 years since then. But I'm trying to change that, and I want to turn it into a race car so that I can take it to track days. Now, a couple weeks ago, I posted a video exploring the possibility of using a first-gen Miata as a donor car to put the kit car body onto. In that video, I took a bunch of measurements, talked through the logistics, and tried to figure out if it was even going to be possible. And in the end, I decided that it probably would be, although it's going to be really challenging, which is fine. Now, at the time that I posted the video, I had been messaging people on Marketplace and Craigslist and looking at Copart, trying to find a viable option for a donor car, and I'd even reached out to a couple people, but I had no luck actually buying one. So I post the video, like 130,000 people view it, which is amazing, and I'm so grateful for that. And a day or two later, this really nice guy named Will reaches out to me and said that he and his roommate, also named Will, are huge Miata guys, have a bunch of them laying around, and that his roommate might actually have the perfect donor car for me. Only problem is, the Wills are in Georgia, which is nowhere near me. But it just so happened that last week I was in Texas visiting my girlfriend's family, and I needed to drive up to Ohio this week, and I figured, hey, what's like 5 to 10 extra hours of driving? So I left Texas last night, slept in a rest area parking lot, actually 2 different rest area parking lots, and now I'm about 4 hours away from taking a look at this car, and hopefully we'll be picking it up. So I'll check in with you then. Regular viewers may notice that I'm doing this trip in my 2001 Chevy Suburban. It was given to me recently by my girlfriend's parents, and I spent an episode giving it a whole bunch of cosmetic upgrades, both on the exterior and the interior. So it's looking really good, and all things considered, it's in pretty great mechanical condition, because Jim and Shelly took really good care of it, and they even swapped in a newer engine recently. But that doesn't change the fact that the frame and a lot of the other components have over 460,000 miles. So naturally it's got some small issues and quirks that reared their heads on this trip, such as this one, where the fuel gauge will just drop to empty out of nowhere, despite the fact that both I and my wallet know full well that it has a full tank of fuel. Oof. Now there doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason to when this happens, and it only happens for a couple minutes at a time. So my guess is that I've just got some loose or damaged wires running from my fuel sending unit up to my gauges that I'm going to need to inspect when I get back to my workshop. But for the purposes of this trip, I was just tracking the gallons I was putting in, the miles I was driving, and that way I could calculate my MPG myself and make sure that I never ran out of gas, which luckily I didn't. Despite the best efforts of my fuel gauge and rush hour traffic outside of Atlanta, I was making pretty good progress, and in the end I was right on time to meet up with Will and see our potential donor car. Now the great thing about this Miata is that it is running and driving with no check engine lights, which is pretty impressive for the $1,600 that Will is asking. But of course, it's not perfect. It's got like 170,000 miles on it, so it's got the classic NA Miata lifter tick. And this was it in a past life. So yeah, safe to say it's been driven hard. And as a result, it's got some weird rattles and vibrations here and there. But the fact that it is running and driving is huge, because even if I don't keep this drivetrain in it long term, I really did want to start with an operable vehicle as a good basis for this project. Plus, it makes me smile. I like it. Not to mention, it's already had a lot of work done that's going to be advantageous for my project, such as having a dropped floor pan, which I'll admit presents some challenges. Oh boy, getting out of this is But even if I do have to do a bit of a contortionist act to get in and out of it with the dropped floor pan, it is going to go a long way towards solving this height issue that we discussed in my last video. I mean, Will here is about the same height as me, and he's got a ton of headroom in this thing, so that's a huge plus. On top of that, it's already got this roll bar, a Kirky racing seat, a Bridge Moto 4-point harness, and quick release steering wheel, and it's virtually rust-free. And what rust it does have appears to be pretty superficial, meaning that we're going to have a really sturdy platform to build this car off of. And finally, just like I was hoping for, all the panels are pretty beat up, so I don't have to feel guilty about cutting them off to make way for a new body. So we shook on 1600, and I ran to U-Haul to pick up a car hauler, and then I went back, and they were nice enough to bring it down the street so I didn't have to embarrass myself trying to turn around the trailer on their property. That dropped floor pan did present a few small challenges with loading this thing on the trailer in terms of clearances, but before I knew it, we had it all loaded up, and I was ready to head back up to Ohio. So for the first time under my ownership, I got to use this button, and we were on our way. But not before taking a few videos at Golden Hour. All right, we got a full tank of gas, the Miata is strapped down, and we are ready to hit the road. Honestly, can't say enough nice things about the two Wills and Jalen, who helped me out at U-Haul. So all three of those guys, thanks for being good people and contributing to this project. I got a few more hours of driving done that night, and aside from some construction slowing me down, everything was going pretty smoothly. Until, just as I was pulling into the rest area where I was gonna sleep, my ABS and traction control lights turned on. Don't love that. Ultimately, I decided that was a problem for future Nate, so I went ahead and got the Suburban ready for sleeping, which pretty much just consists of taking Goose's crate out, putting it up front, blowing up my little air mattress, and taking Goose for a little walk before calling it a night. And I gotta say, it is pretty amazing to have a vehicle that I can fully lay down in the back of quite comfortably. Sadly, the burb did not fix itself overnight, and future Nate was now current Nate. I don't think I'll be able to fully fix this problem until I'm back at my workshop, but just to do my due diligence, I did go ahead and check the wiring going to both wheel speed sensors up on the front wheels, as well as the wiring going back to the vehicle speed sensor on the extension housing, and all of that looked fine. So I went ahead and popped the hood, and again, just for good measure, made sure that I didn't have low brake fluid, which I didn't. So I got that closed back up, and at this point, I was just curious to see if it was some sort of intermittent issue that would go away again once I started driving. So I took the boy for a walk, and then once he had had some time outside, we went ahead and hit the road again. Back when my girlfriend Rachel's parents gave me the burb, they did mention that these lights had been coming on intermittently. But by the time I was driving it, I only had them turn on like once or twice for a couple miles at a time, and then they turned off and stayed off for like 1,000 miles. So my theory was that there was just some debris on the wheel speed sensor or the sensor ring that was causing things not to read correctly and causing these lights to come on, and that debris had worked itself out, gotten out of there, and was no longer obstructing things. Obviously, now that the lights came back on, I'm not so sure about that theory. But the good news is the brakes themselves feel fine and they're working great, so I don't think there's anything mechanically wrong with them. The weather is great, so my driving conditions are perfect. I'm just gonna drive safely, keep a good following distance behind other vehicles, and then we'll investigate further when we're back in my workshop. Unfortunately, the lights did not turn off on their own as I kept driving. So out of curiosity, at the next gas station, I pulled out my handy dandy little toolkit and got the negative terminal disconnected on my battery. I went ahead and left that disconnected for about 10 minutes while I took Goose for a walk, and then reconnected it after that. Now this can reset codes and the electronics in your vehicle, but of course if there is a persistent issue, it's not actually going to fix that, and the lights are just going to turn back on. But as expected, when I fired the car back up, the lights were gone because everything had been reset. So I was curious to see if they were going to stay gone. So I went ahead and started driving, and after putting in 40 or 50 more miles, the lights had actually stayed off the whole time. And I'm no diagnostics expert, but what that tells me is that this is not a constant issue, but rather an intermittent one that probably is some sort of electrical fault or debris on the wheel speed sensor or something of that nature. So I still want to investigate that further and get it properly fixed, but at least the lights are off for now. So at this point, the drive was going great, and I actually stopped near historic Yorktown for a couple days to visit family, which was a much needed reprieve from driving for both me and my lower back. But eventually, whether me and my lower back were ready or not, it was time to hit the road again. Luckily though, aside from this jerk in a red sports car tailgating me the whole time, this was a pretty pleasant drive. My aunt had recommended a route that avoided DC and a bunch of major highways, so I was just taking in all the sights on the back roads through the Appalachians. I will admit, with the trailers, some of the narrow sections and the bigger hills were a little bit tricky, but overall, this was actually a really relaxing time. Eventually, I did meet back up with some major highways, but since it was getting dark at that point, I didn't really mind. And finally, after one more stop for fuel, which brought my grand total spent on fuel to whatever scary number is on the screen right now, I was finally pulling back into my driveway, and the Miata was right next to the Jamaican for the very first time. The next morning, my friend Eric pulled up in his NA Miata to go ahead and help me get my NA Miata loaded off of this trailer. Well, that and to laugh at me trying to get in and out of it with a dropped floor pan, but either way, his help was appreciated. The battery on mine was completely flat, so once we got it offloaded, Eric gave me a jump, and we goofed around a little bit while we let it warm up. While Eric kept himself entertained with my collection of weird bikes, I went ahead and got the soft top put down, and then went ahead and pulled this thing into place so that it could finally be face to face with what it would become. Of course, I then rev bombed it a few times because I'm a child. And then because I'm an old man, I struggled to get out of it.
That thing is terrible to get out.
It is pretty bad. But race car.
In classic Ohio fashion, it was pouring rain just 30 minutes later when I returned the U-Haul, but the next morning I went and got a battery as well as a temp tag so I could start this thing up and drive it to the DMV for a VIN inspection. Unfortunately though, I didn't have the right T connection to run these vent tubes out of the back of the battery to this tube in the floor that vents everything out of the back of the vehicle, so I went ahead and got an aftermarket one and got that connected. I did see in a lot of forums and Reddit posts that a lot of NA Miata owners who have aftermarket batteries without the right connections for this just don't even bother running it, and they haven't really had any big problems, but I figure I should do it the right way for safety and whatnot. And finally, with that taken care of, I could go ahead and hit the mean streets. At this point, I was actually figuring out a pretty decent method for getting in and out of this thing that wasn't too embarrassing, just in time for me to cut it up and put a roof on it and probably ruin that method. With the VIN inspection done, I went ahead and ran over to Sheetz to get a splash of gas, although not too much, because I'm going to have to empty the fuel tank probably when I start cutting everything up. And then I headed over to the local state park for a little joyride. Honestly, the more that I drive this thing around, the more tempted I am to just leave it in its current state for a little while and just enjoy it as a Miata before I start cutting it up and turning it into something new. But like I said, the Jamaican has been on the back burner for like 15 years, and I really don't want to leave it there any longer. So I enjoyed it for a couple days, and if you'll indulge me, I wanted to go to the lake and make one more quick little edit of it before it never looks like this again. With my joyride complete, the Miata was back in the shop, where it will presumably stay until it's got this body on it. Now this is without a doubt going to be a very long and very challenging project, but having a donor car in hand is a massive step in the right direction. And sure, it's got some rattles and vibrations that I need to diagnose and fix, and it's got a welded diff that I need to replace with an open one, and a handful of other things, but I paid $1,600 for a running and driving car with no check engine lights. So I'm going to call that a win. Plus, it's got a lot of other great things going for it. It's got that drop floor pan, which is going to be huge when it comes to sorting the height issue that I'm going to have inside the Jamaican. It's already got a roll bar, which I'm hoping is going to fit under the shell of the Jamaican without any modification. But even if we do need to modify it, it's awesome that we already have it. It's got the Kirky racing seat, a quick release steering wheel, and as a result of living in the South its entire life, it's nearly rust-free, which is huge. Plus, while most people might see this as a negative, I see the fact that all the panels are pretty beat up and dented as a positive, because now I don't have to feel guilty about cutting this thing up to turn it into something new. So there's certainly a long road ahead, but I'm excited to head down it, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. So if you want to watch me take this car and that car and turn them into one and achieve this dream that I've had for a decade and a half now, please consider subscribing and liking and hyping this video. Those are the best things that you can do right now to support me and this channel and help this build come to life. In the meantime, thanks for being here, and go build something today.